Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mari Lakey. I'm the project manager at Community Power Agency and a co-author of the Handbook. And I'll be facilitating this session today. So I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the country that I'm joining from today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining us today. And I'd also like to acknowledge the countries that you're coming from, wherever you are. Um, so today we're going to have some awesome people to talk to with a lot of incredible insight in community collaboration. I'm really excited to have Heidi McElnea, the former regional coordinator and another co-author on the handbook. We've got Chris Sounness from the Wimmera Southern Mallee Development. And we have Alison McLean, who's the executive manager in the Economic Development and Tourism Department at Hayshire Council. And they're going to be speaking to you about some of their experience in working with communities and kind of collaborating for better outcomes in the energy shift. So I just wanted to start off by saying thank you so much to the people who filled in the survey with a bit of information about yourselves. So that helped us to get a picture of what you might want to talk about most today. And we've thought about that in terms of the design of the session. So there was a really keen interest just to learn more about what is collaboration in the energy shift? What does that mean? People wanted to hear about some of the processes of collaboration and see some real life examples. And there was also some common themes that were coming up. So people are interested in housing, regional benefit sharing, better community engagement. And I think the other thing that we really wanted to do today is provide you with some resources that can help you build networks for the future. And if possible, Nosy, I think that there's so Eleanor, who I forgot to introduce, is my wonderful co-host today and is going to be the tech support for this session. Um, I was just going to ask Eleanor if you would possibly be able to launch, there should be a quiz. And yeah,
Quiz. Let me
sorry.
find. Oh,
And
yeah,
if you can, the
I
quizzes
see.
give us a better sense of who's joining us today, and your kind of connection with renewable energy or how you self-describe. So, are you a community member who lives in an area where there's lots of large-scale projects? A volunteer in a community group, we can see a lot of those. We've got a fair few council officers. Um, yep, anyone else? If you're having trouble with the poll, just let us know. Oh, sorry, the quiz. Okay, I'll give that an extra moment. Got at least one person who works in state and federal government. That was a surprise. But we've got, yeah, so what have we got? Mostly, I think I'll end the poll and then you can all sort of see who we're surrounded by today in this online environment, because I think that's useful when we're speaking. Oh, there we go, sharing the results. All right, so can everyone see that? Yes. Oh, can we see it? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. We can see.
Thank you. We've got a bunch of people who are volunteering at a community group or organization, followed by a number of people who are in, areas with lots of large-scale renewables, a few council officers, and a couple of people in community engagement, and one person who works for state or federal government. So thanks so much for that. That just helps us to get a sense of who we're in the room with, and I guess some of the conversations that we're going to have later on today.
And Murray in the chat as well, someone has said some of us wear multiple hats. So that's good to keep in mind too.
Exactly. And I think that's more often the case than not, right? So yeah, we've done our introduction. What's going to come up for the rest of today? I'll do a brief overview of the handbook. We'll then share some stories from the ground. So that'll be from our wonderful presenters sharing their experience in their different communities. We'll then jump into a question and answer session, and we'll have a workshop activity. So in the workshop, we're basically just going to be looking to learn a little bit more about your experiences and what you're interested in learning about when it comes to collaboration in the energy shift. We'll provide some resources and then wrap up, and hopefully we'll all be done by just before 7:30. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. So to get started, I'm sure many of us are familiar with why we're here today. We're in the midst of a really big change. The shift to renewable energy is really profound for a lot of communities, and we're seeing really large, I guess, yeah, developments across many places in regional and remote Australia. But we do know that renewables are going to be the lowest cost alternative to what we have right now, a failing kind of coal system that isn't going to keep pace with the demand for electricity. So we have an impetus for change. There's a real need for change. But also at the same time, we want to make sure that this is a positive shift. So I think for us, we've seen in our work that when this is done well, there's these significant opportunities that we can make from the renewable energy shift around new jobs or support for housing, funding new projects, even strengthening self-determination amongst First Nations communities. But there's lots of challenges as well. And so we need to be involved as community members and as people involved in the energy shift to avoid those negative impacts and make sure that they're planned and addressed adequately. So, why are we talking about community-led collaboration? It's essentially what we see as communities working together to achieve a shared vision for their region in the energy shift. For us, this is a proactive, constructive, and participatory process seeking to build a shared understanding of what matters in different regions and then working from there. So while we see, developers, industry, government all having a role to play, we firmly believe that local people are the experts in their towns and their regions. And because of this, collaborative approaches can build better outcomes for communities driven by their insights, their needs, and their aspirations. So, in short, if big change is happening, this is about what we can do collectively to understand that and avoid undesirable outcomes and work towards the good ones. So, yeah, hopefully we can collaborate towards a really positive future in that space. And that's why we wrote this handbook that I'm sure many of you have seen and is the reason why you've jumped on today. So with my co-author Heidi, we've been working in the New England region for several years now, and our regional coordinator there has been, Heidi's been based in that region for a long time. So through her work, it became really clear that community members wanted to step up and have more of a say about the change that was happening in their region. And as Heidi will discuss, it really was lots of different people, lots of different groups coming together and working on the issues that mattered to them. So for in that context, there was a lot of effort around biodiversity, agriculture, land use, workforce development. And what started as a process of documenting this work in the New England region then expanded because we saw that so many communities around Australia are experimenting with these approaches and doing this work to really work together and find better outcomes. So, yeah, and this is where the handbook steps in. So we've tried to create it so it's really accessible and a useful tool for community members at the forefront of the energy shift. But while it's written for community members, we hope that it's also accessible and useful as a tool for council officers, policymakers, and developers. But we'd also really love to hear your feedback and if there's ways that it could be improved. In the handbook, we've kind of documented a process for what change looks like, or what we've sort of described as a process for community-led collaboration. Starting from kind of understanding a bit of background on the energy transition and then knowing more about your regional context, finding what the shared goals are that resonate in your community and what are the specific outcomes that you want to work towards. Then organizing collaborative efforts. We talk a lot about different kind of approaches to make work and function and stick and be smooth. And then taking action on what really matters. So often those are the topics that we've mentioned already, things like biodiversity, housing. In some communities, it might be transport, and others, it might be First Nations justice and rights. And then we can do work to reflect and think about how we adapt for the future. What are the outcomes we've achieved? What do we want to do next? And sort of celebrate our progress. So they're kind of the key sections of the handbook, but obviously in real life, there's many ways to do this work and processes are always messy and evolving. So yeah, there's no one size fits all. And I think that's why it's good that we've got three different presenters speaking today to their experiences of change. As a quick little indication of what's in the guide, this sort of gives you an example of some of the key, strategies and opportunities that we describe around themes that we've noticed in our work that are really common. So, getting better outcomes in terms of biodiversity, making sure that there's win-wins for agriculture and renewables, supporting First Nations work, enabling affordable housing amongst the transition, thinking about benefit sharing and good community engagement principles. And there's a lot in there, so it's really worth diving in and having a look at those sections. We also have lots of case studies that bring these insights to life. I won't go through them all, but I think they really help to sort of inspire us and think about what's already happening. And then the other part that, I think many community members will appreciate is there's toolboxes. How do you actually do this thing in practice? How do you make it work in reality? So there's things for thinking about resourcing and funding. There's toolboxes for how to analyze your context or think about stakeholders in your region or running collaborative sessions. There's lots of different tools in there, and you can just jump into what's relevant to you or the things that you have questions about. If you're a community development practitioner, this is probably very much in your wheelhouse, but we hope that sharing these skills can support a wider group of people to take up this work. So now I think that's everything in terms of the handbook and enough from me for the moment. And we're going to jump into our first presentation, which is going to be from Heidi. So Heidi, I'll let you step up and I'll jump into your slide deck.
Thanks for that overview and the introduction. So I just wanted to provide some snapshots from the New England region in New South Wales. So we're situated roughly halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. The renewable energy zone was declared at the end of 2021. Energy Co is in the process of exploring and planning where new transmission lines will be needed to transport energy from the region to other centres such as the Hunter. But despite that, we have several projects already constructed or in the process of being constructed, which are just using the existing transmission line. So I think that little explanation goes some way to explain to how a little bit we're sort of well into the process of experiencing this shift, even though the planning is still also very much in process. So so I'll just sort of run you through briefly a few of the things that we've been working on here. I don't know how I indicate us to move the slide, but we can probably click to the next one, please. Thank you. So I probably just, in terms of the approach that we've taken, there's many things that we could chat about, but I think it's only 5 minutes here. So 3 of the principles that I'll highlight that I find really important in this sort of building collaborations is inclusion and really thinking hard. And this is often the challenge, is that people on the ground don't feel that they're part of the conversation. They don't feel they're part of decision-making processes, and that the decisions are often made in offices, in cities, say, far away. And so I think it's imperative that it keeps coming back to the grassroots and we keep reminding ourselves of who should have a say and who should be involved in some of the decisions and the participation. The other thing I think with working with working with communities and then working with people across a range of different sectors, whether that's in renewable energy itself, local government, state government, service groups, natural resource management groups, farmers, whoever it is, it's useful for us all to have an open mind and don't make too many assumptions about what we think people will be interested in. A curious mindset is really useful, I think. And the other thing that I find is really beneficial is if you're designing workshops or other events, or information sharing sessions, how can you make them as hands-on as possible? Because absolutely, without doubt, most people feel most involved and get better understanding of the issues at hand if they're actively engaged and they're not just sort of not entirely just listening passively to information as it comes in. So I'll probably shift on to the next slide. So just quickly, one of the other useful things that I think we were able to do to help prep the community was to pull together a little discussion paper that just gave a snapshot of one of the issues that you may not necessarily straight away think is going to be a problem, but when we, or problem slash opportunity, but when we noticed when particularly well, in the town that I was living in, when a solar farm was built, just the upward pressure that was putting on rents and housing affordability, and how with better proactive organisation, that can be a tool for how we sort of plan long-term accommodation while also supporting short-term accommodation needs of workers. So just pulling together a report in the first instance, then getting people together for a housing roundtable. You can probably move it over, and just thinking broadly in terms of who we should have in the room and how to get people thinking and establishing their own little working group. So that's definitely moving on. Just to the next slide too on that was also really useful as part of that pulling together information. People can access individual information about individual projects in New South Wales. It's the planning portal, but to actually see it as a combination, this was particularly useful when we were looking at both the housing requirements and the workforce opportunities, just to go through, and it's time consuming, but to draw out from each environmental impact statement how many people at what stages of the project for how long will be working on those sites, and just getting a general sense of what are the needs in different kind of parts of the region. If you want to move over then. And other working groups that we've had involve transmission line planning, and we have a lot of local knowledge in our region, whether that's First Nations custodians, whether it's ecologists, farmers, other environmental groups, sustainable groups. We together collectively, so we pulled together a working group and put all of our, had discussions, put together these recommendations for transmission line management. Also talking to other companies like Transgrid just to sit down and work through and discuss, because we really felt that it needed to be front of mind in the planning process, and collectively there was a lot of knowledge there that we wanted to share and didn't feel adequately that there was a space for us to do that. So that's an ongoing thing. And similarly, it's been really useful to sit down with a number of First Nations-led businesses and share and reflect on what are some of the current challenges and how do we actually make it more accessible for First Nations-led businesses from our region to be actively involved, particularly in terms of workforce, business development, and providing mentoring and support within their community, so that it is something that the benefits can be experienced. So one of the things, and I guess if we move to the next slide, working together to put on this New England Careers Expo and having a really strong First Nations presence in that, inviting a lot of people from the community, from high schools, and bringing along also together renewable energy developers, other people like Energy Co, state government, local government. So we could really people could face-to-face ask the questions, get the information to look at how they might be able to participate from these projects as they're emerging and move forward. We went to the adult migrant English program because we have quite a lot of settlers from other countries and coming through refugee programs and the like, and found that really useful. We did several projects, sometimes a workshop, sometimes with an interpreter. People were really interested to understand how renewable energy works, and actually could draw reference from projects back home, perhaps that they'd seen in their area or had experience with, because these are all people that are looking for work as well. We also did some other workshops with some of our local sustainability groups on things like energy efficiency and keeping a home warm in winter and things like just to help with energy literacy. Yeah, what have we got? Been to a lot of school careers days, and we developed this little game too, so the kids could yeah, just have fun while they're kind of learning a little bit about some of the different technologies. And what's next after that? Even with the smaller kids, like going to some of the central schools where they have kids as young as, 5 or 6, and helping, having a model of one of the careers fairs had a model of a wind turbine, and the kids were really interested to draw it and better understand how it worked. Because particularly, these projects, these are a long-term, 30-year kind of projects. It's really important that young people now are getting access to information and know more what it's about so they can be involved. And then also making connections with other people in the community. So Sarah was working with Job Link Plus, so particularly looking at how to support unemployed people with these work opportunities rather than just have the fly-in, fly-out workers. And Sally from Jenny Energy is really interested in supporting people in her community of Narrabri and surrounds, particularly in a region like that has a lot of coal and gas, and it's important for communities to be able to see what benefits renewable energy can have over some of these extractive industries. So I think that probably gets us pretty close to the end of my summary. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Heidi. Yeah, really incredible work. And it's also been, yeah, just such a privilege to get to look at what Heidi's done and supported within the New England region. So yeah, thank you so much for that time. We'll get to questions in a moment. Now I think I get to hand over to Chris. So I'll let you jump in.
No worries. Yeah, I chose not to have a presentation, and seeing Heidi's great work, I wouldn't be able to compete with it, but I wish I had some of the people who are all working together in the region on display, because that's what I think Heidi has illustrated so well. It is all about the people. What I'll talk about is, as I say, is collaboration, but also how at the moment, and our region is going through a particularly challenging time where a lot of communities are really struggling to have conversations, and how I suppose how a number of us are trying to work on it to try and reframe the discussion. And I think at the moment the hardest part is often the conversation is the communities are being used to achieve an outcome for others, i.e., rural communities are being asked to do this so that the lights can stay on in Melbourne, or we can get to net zero as a country, which means people are being asked to take sides, which generally means you're getting in a conflicted space. So we're at the moment, and as I say, we've done a lot of the work, and this is why the guide I think is so good, because it highlights all the various issues you've got to. We're doing all that work, but we've still got in a space of conflict, and it keeps on. I keep on coming back to the communities are being asked to pick a side. You're either for the energy transition, or you're against the energy transition, or the government will do a press release saying 700 people will be employed. Isn't that great? And so you're asked to pick a side. Are you for the government or against the government? Or are you for the companies or against the companies? And when you're asked to pick sides, it feels, I think, and I can't speak on behalf of a lot of most of the people in the community, but the impression I get is basically you're being used as a tool and a weapon to try and win a war to either get the projects up or stop the projects going ahead. And that's creating a space where I suppose no one likes being used as a tool or being called a tool, but that's what it seems like it's coming across. We're being asked to pick sides. So how do we actually change that and sort of really demonstrate a sense of collaboration? Over the last 6 months, building on the work we've been doing, is we've had a number of roundtables to ask communities, ask farmers, ask business leaders, what does growth mean for them? And in general, just about there's a consensus that we all want a better community to live. We want better education. We want better access to childcare. We want better outcomes for our youth so that they feel there's some career opportunities locally. We want better roads. We're no different to any other part of Australia. We just want a better community. And at the moment, so I suppose the premise we're running with is actually rather than talking about energy as the driver, how about we actually talk about what a better community would be? And energy may be a byproduct of a better community because there'll be investment in that. So how are we going about that? So we're moving into thinking about scenario planning. But part of doing scenario planning for the future is you've got to talk about the past. And the last 20 years in the Wimmera Southern Mallee, has actually been pretty tough because we've had declining population. Our population's got older. Our health and education outcomes have got worse. Our roads have deteriorated. Every service, there's less shops in the small towns. The houses there hasn't been reinvestment in housing. So we've got to acknowledge that the last 20 years haven't got us to where we got to. Agriculture is our primary industry and the number one star of our economy. So we've also got to acknowledge that agriculture can't grow an economy by itself. It could be a major part, and I think as long as I'm alive and probably the next 100 years, agriculture is still going to be the major part of the economy for Wimmera Southern Mallee. But what can we do to grow our economy? And that's where the scenario planning. So over the next 6 months, what we're going to be really focusing on is how can we actually have discussions with our community so that they actually talk about their future, about the future they want, which won't be, I can't imagine it will be, I want mining, I want energy projects, I don't want energy projects, I don't want mining. It'll be, all right, I want to make sure the school stays open in my town. I want to make sure the roads are of a reasonable standard. I want to make sure there's a health service within 50 k's of where I live. I think they're the type of discussions we're going to be trying to have. And to do that, and you've got to do this in a collaborative manner. You need all the people around the table start talking about how we can actually get there. What opportunities are we going to get there? And some of those choices might be challenging. Some of the choices mean, oh, this external investment may change the landscape. There will be negative connotations from that, but the pluses outweigh the negatives. And it's about having those honest conversations. But the only way you can have those honest conversations is you've got to build up trust, you've got to build collaboration, and people have got to feel they're empowered to have a conversation. And that, if I think about what the handbook is all about and what CPA's, I suppose, advocating is actually communities being at the table trying to influence their own future rather than have the future done to them. And I think that's the sort of principles that the CPA handbook's talking about. And I think we've really all got to work at ways of doing that. Not that they can control their future, but they can influence it because change happens. Change is always happening. Change is neither good or bad. It just means things are going to be different. And we've got to work with our communities to work out how we can get the best possible different. And that's open to interpretation, obviously. But everyone I've talked to in our community agrees that what we've got now can be better in the future. So how are we going to have a better future for everyone? And I think that's what collaboration is about. And I think what this handbook's about. But my only suggestion is I think the energy is a byproduct rather than the communities. If we talk to the communities about how we have a better community and a byproduct will be energy generation, I think we may have a bit less conflict going forward. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I think, yeah, that's a really yeah, beautiful description that like a lot of communities are feeling like there's a lot of stuff being pushed on them at the moment. And when we shift to think about the energy shift as being a maybe a tool for positive things, or it's, this kind of it's just part of the journey of getting better outcomes for our communities in a whole bunch of different ways. Maybe that's going to deliver these more meaningful long-term outcomes that resonate with local people. But I think without further ado, I should probably hand over to our third speaker, Alison McLean from Hay Shire Council. Thanks so much, Alison.
Oh, thanks for having me. And actually, great segue from Chris there. So, my name's Ali McLean. I'm coming to you from southwestern New South Wales, and I've got a map for those of us who don't know where we are. What I'm going to talk about today, oh, there's the map, is the approach that we took in Hay. I'm going to preface it by saying that what we did was really a very place-based response. We have a very sparse population. We have one main populous community in Hay. We're quite small. We're under 3,000 people. Our topography is suitable, really suitable for wind and solar. And we farm on marginal country. So there is a whole lot of variables that sort of set themselves up when we heard about this thing that was called the Southwest Res. So Heidi talked about her region, which is up in the New England renewable energy zone, which you can see up in the top right there. And we're down in the other corner, down in the Southwest renewable energy zone with Hay, where I'm coming to you from, right in the middle of that zone. So if we can go to the next. Oh, can we just go back? I'll just make one quick point. The reason why why we were chosen, and why we're in this random geographic area called a Southwest Renewable Energy Zone is because we have new transmission lines that are going through Hay. So we have Project Energy Connect and VNI West, and that is why we became part of this renewable energy zone. If you flip to the next one, in New South Wales, Energy Co delivered the renewable energy zone. Same for Heidi. It's a statutory body that the New South Wales government controls. They ran an access program. So the access into the Southwest Res was actually competitive, and there are four developments that have been given access into the line. So basically, they've got capacity to send their electrons away. And you can see those four projects there with Hay being right in the impact zone. So every turbine that's coming into the region at this point in time will be coming through Hay. And that's about 6,500 oversize, overmass movements over the next 3 years. So it's big. It's a huge change for us. But we're actually, as a community, quite supportive of the renewable change. And I'm just going to take you through some of the work that we did way back when in 2021, when we found ourselves in this position. So we had in June 2021, land holders ringing in and saying, we've got energy developers talking to us about doing energy developments, wind turbines, wind farms in Hay. The minute that you have those conversations happening is the minute that you have impact. It's not when the first shovel goes in the ground. We had energy developers calling community groups and talking about benefits and how can we sponsor you. We had the community wondering what the hell was going on, and the grapevine had started. And in any small country town, as many of you will know, the grapevine will beat social media, the newspapers, radio any day of the week. We also had a little bit of NIMBY talk happening. So not in my backyard. And I was really concerned. I had friends who lived in Walker. I had friends who lived in Coolar and Dunedoo. And I knew what had happened in those areas where there were really divided communities. And I didn't want to see that happen in Hay. So from a local government point of view, we were wondering, well, how do we ensure that our community doesn't divide? Because social cohesion is absolutely key for our community, as it is for every community. But we are very reliant because we are isolated and we're only a small number of people. So we were wondering, is this our job to run this? Is it our job to get involved in this? Whose actual job would it be in council to do it? How are we informing the community? Where is the government in this whole conversation? What's happening in other reses? What is this thing called social license and how do we ensure it? How do we maximize the benefits and how do we ensure this opportunity is not missed? And really the question is, what does the energy transition mean to Hay? So the next slide, thanks. Um, what we did is we really wanted to make sure that we had discussion and not division. And we've said right from the beginning that if this was going to happen, we wanted to make sure that it happened with us and not to us. And to Chris's point, what we did is we took the ideology out of the conversation. And what we presented was there is a new industry that is coming to Hay. What do we think about this new industry coming to Hay? Because we knew in our community that when a small minority of really loud voices get control of a conversation, that becomes the truth. And people will shy away from conflict and they will shy away from those conversations. And we knew that it was too big an opportunity and too significant a change for us not to inform the community about what was going to happen and what the potential impacts were and what the potential opportunities were going to be. So we went very early on this. We started this before the res was even declared. This process began in June of 2022, and here we are, nearly three or more than 3 years later, and we still continue to do this work with our community. The first thing that we did is we pulled together a group of all of our council staff and our councillors, and what we really wanted to do was develop knowledge within the council and with our councillors, because the councillors were the ones who had to stand up and empower the community to the point where they said, we are going to support the community through this change, and we are going to be supportive of this new industry that's coming to Hay. And that made such a difference to our community because it meant that they felt someone had this, so they didn't have to worry about it. It also meant that conversations weren't about whether you believe in climate change or not, whether you believe in renewable energy or not. It was about whether we believe this is an opportunity for our community. And if this is going to happen, what do we want to get out of it? We then pulled together a group of thought leaders, so 12 people from our community across all demographics, across all political sides, and across all different levels of understanding in terms of renewable energy. We sat with them for 4 hours and we had an absolutely warts and all conversation. We did a lot of myth busting. We talked about whether this was something the community wanted to do. We talked about whether our community could actually take this sort of an impact. We were talking about housing before, Heidi was. Um, we're looking at a workforce of 1,500 people coming into our community, and we only have an existing workforce of 1,200. It's huge, the impacts if they aren't managed properly. Um, and then after that, we did a couple of community workshops. So we actually went out and we did town halls and we said, this is what's proposed, this is what's happening, this is what we know now. It was a very dynamic conversation at that point and continues to be. Anyone who's in this space will know that it changes from week to week. And we let people have their say with no judgment. We let them ask the questions that they wanted to ask. We let them um, ensure that the impacts that they were concerned about were up on the board and they were in a plan, and we made sure that the opportunities were there as well. Because as boring as it is, and I say this all the time to my community, if it's not in a plan and it's not written down, then nothing ever happens with that. So it's about getting that coordination and collaboration happening. And we started with our community at that point. And we continue to do that ongoing engagement. What we developed out of that was a set of principles. Those principles really were the rules of engagement. So if the energy transition is coming to Hay, this is how we want everyone to behave. This is what we want to get out of it. These are the things that we're concerned about, and we will work with you to make sure that happens. So when we were talking about collaboration before, we realized that there are many people involved in this as stakeholders, the state government, developers, the community, landowners, And we needed to make sure that all of those people felt included in the conversation, that their voices were part of that plan, and that we all had a mutual understanding about what this was going to look like in Hay. And we really set the scene from that. And again, that helped our community to feel empowered because, as Chris said, change is hard. And this is monumental change. This will change our geography, it will change our economy, it'll change our social fabric. But to be able to do that well, we need to do it with other people. We're too small not to lean on other people. And we work really closely with the other councils, the other 7 councils and communities in the Southwest Res. And we do present a united front, both to the developers and state government agencies. What we did at the end of that process back in 2022 was actually pull all of the developers together for an industry roundtable, and we presented the principles to them. At that stage, we had about 23 developments that were proposed for the area, and we said, these are the rules. We're not going to budge from these rules. If you want to come here, then we will welcome you, but you need to behave in this way. We want you to deliver legacy outcomes. We don't want a sugar hit of construction that puts a boom or a bust into our economy. We want to be able to manage it well. We want to work with you and we want to see legacy outcomes. And that's what we've been working on for the past couple of years with the community. One of the important things that came out of that roundtable was the developers said, you need to tell us what your issues look like and what your solutions look like for your community. So we couldn't just go to them and say, we want you to fix housing. We need to say, what does that look like in Hay? And we've put in a lot of work with the community to be able to identify exactly what those solutions are. Can I go to the next slide, which I can't remember what it is now? So this is probably, in terms of outcomes, for me, this is the guiding star. This is what we presented to the community, and we've done this, like I said, for the past 3 years. It is about discussion, not division. We didn't want the community to divide. We want the transition to happen with our community and not to it. And this quote from a local farmer and the AFL club president probably sums it up best, which is, I don't want this here, I don't want the turbines, but if it's coming, the whole community will benefit, so I'll support it. And that's where we wanted to get to. We didn't want people to have to put a flag in the sand and say, this is my belief and this is where I stand. What we wanted to do was to get to that middle ground where the community was the focus. And we said, we'll support it if the benefit is for the greater good of our community. And we've actually been able to achieve that as well. So if you just quickly go to the next slide. For those who are involved in it's not flipping. For
So,
those who are in,
sorry, Alison, it's just hidden, so I don't think I'm able to at this point.
oh, okay. For those who are involved in, oh, there it is. For those who are involved in local government, you'll know that they'll want documentation and plans and frameworks. And what we actually developed was a framework, like I said, that was very place-based, and we've been able to then support our other neighbouring councils to deliver similar sorts of frameworks. Again, really unique to their own locations. So the first bit of work we did, the principles document, was about empowering our community and building community capacity and understanding about what this transition was going to look like. We did a piece of work where we looked at, well, what are our values and what do we want to look like in 35 years? At the moment, we're focusing particularly on the economic transition. So what are the other opportunities that will come for our economy? And generational legacy, which is what we're delivering through community benefit funds with the council and other community benefit programs that the developers are delivering. And that's where we really say, not that sugar hit, give us generational change, because what this opportunity does for us is actually gives us agency in our future, which is something that we've never been able to achieve before. Because we're an agrarian economy, we're very reliant on the weather, and when we go into periods of drought or in fact flood back in 2022, the impact is across our whole economy. We do not have another industry that can sort of keep us afloat while that's happening. And our ultimate goal through all of this, and to Chris's point as well, this is about a new industry coming into an area, and this is about getting system resilience, and that's across our community, our economy, and our environment. The energy transition will help us to do that, but it is not the only solution that will deliver that for us.